one.
Hello, Antiochian Men. This is Bryce Kirk coming to you once again with another interview on our YouTube channel. Today, I will be interviewing our president of the Antiochian Men for the Diocese of Miami in the Southeast, Michael Baclig. Michael, thank you for taking the time to answer some questions today.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. It's good to see you again. I thought we would start out by getting to know you a little bit better. Please start by telling us about yourself and your family.
Well, my name is Michael Baclig. I'm 38 years old, and I have a beautiful wife, Elizabeth, and I have 3 children. Andrew, who's 12, almost 13. I have a son named James, who's 9. He'll be 10 at the end of this year. And then Katie is my youngest. She's 7, and she is actually going to be 8 here next month. So that's coming up pretty quickly. And I have no brothers or sisters. I'm an only child. My parents are both Orthodox Christians. They met actually in college when they went to Oral Roberts University in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And they were both Protestant and looking for a common faith. And they found the Orthodox Church. And they were married at St. Anthony in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And I was born a little less than a year later. And my dad actually decided to go to seminary and become a priest. And he's still a priest in our archdiocese. He has a church in Van Nuys, California, and it's St. Michael's Orthodox Church in the Antiochian Archdiocese. And he's been a priest there for almost 30 years. But his first church was actually on the East Coast in a town called Upper Darby, just outside of Philadelphia. And all my early memories are from the East Coast, just in that community there.
Well, awesome. Yeah, your family does seem to have some very deep roots in the church, considering that your parents both converted, and I'm assuming that you're cradle Orthodox as well. So would you mind sharing with us what your Orthodox experience has been up to this point in your life?
Yeah, my Orthodox experience is quite a story, just because I feel I have a unique perspective being the son of a priest. I always had what I felt were a lot of expectations put on me. As the priest's son, and especially without having brothers or sisters, I felt a lot of pressure. It was largely self-imposed pressure to try to live up to who my father was, being an important person, being the priest of the churches that I was a part of ever since, well, as far back as I can remember. And I am very grateful to have been raised in the church. I can say that I have memories going back to my childhood of just spending time with families in the church, the amazing hospitality when they would open up their homes to my family. And they would always be so kind to me and to my parents. They never, ever wanted the priest to want for anything. And that meant a lot to me and continues to mean a lot to me because of that agape love that I experienced in the church. But having said that, I have a unique perspective because a lot of what I did in especially my earlier life and as a young man, as a teenager, I showed up to different events, church events. I showed up to church and I would just be going through the motions. It was part of my family, part of who I was the son of. It became very just automatic for me, where I was really going through the motions. And I really didn't have a deep understanding of my faith. I was a very experiential Orthodox Christian. I experienced the faith by being in the church, by going to the events, by going to liturgy and all the services. As the son of a priest, I went to almost every single one, which is quite a lot. But, it became just a very, it became something where I was taking it for granted. And I wasn't really understanding, especially the intellectual side. I didn't really feel like I needed to know. I just experienced it. And it wasn't until much later in life, actually very recently, I would say about 2 years ago, when my life experienced kind of a shock and I had a real crisis hit. I went through a divorce and I was married in the Orthodox Church. I'd been married for 14 years, and the way things happened and, the bad choices that I had been making ended up affecting my life very deeply in a deep personal way. And I was in crisis, a very serious crisis, where for the first time I felt like I needed the church. I didn't know where else to go. When I was in trouble, all I had known was the church. So I, thank God, was able to find amazing support in the community that we're both the members of at St. Nicholas here in Springdale, Arkansas. Had amazing direction from my spiritual father, Father John Atchison, our priest, and really spent the last 2 full years really doing a lot of self-education on the Orthodox faith to try to understand what I didn't understand before, and starting to connect the dots between the different things I had heard being brought up in the church, but I wasn't really listening. So it's been quite an experience, especially in these last 2 years, in a lot of my self-education, listening to podcasts on Ancient Faith Radio, reading books, reading scripture, just actually reading the scripture, which I had never done on my own before. I just thought it was enough to hear it every Sunday in church. But then amazing things started happening in my life. And I'm very grateful. I'm very grateful to God to be finally on the other side of it, and continuing to working hard on my faith, but also trying to help the others in our community.
Right, absolutely. That's very good. Thank you for sharing that. So you've clearly experienced quite a bit over your 38 years of life. So your life experience seems to give you a unique perspective on things. Why do you think the Antiochian Men's Organization is so badly needed in our diocese?
Yeah, I'll share. Just as a child in the church, I remember, I was born in the early 80s, and there was already an Antiochian Women's Organization. They've been around for quite a while. And I always wondered as a child, why isn't there an Antiochian Men's Organization? It's just not fair, right? The typical response of a child. And really, as I got older, it was more just, it seems like there's a need there, and I wish there was one.
Right.
And it felt like it had to eventually happen, but I didn't know when it would happen. And I certainly didn't know, especially earlier in life, I didn't know how to step up and try to help. I wanted it to be done for me, but I didn't want to necessarily, work at that time to try to make it happen. I didn't know how. But I think the need really does exist, especially today. And because of how many ways, especially our younger men, are just being completely inundated by our culture, by different things that, in society, there's so many distractions, and technology makes it so easy for people to kind of pursue self-gratification, instant gratification. We're all taught to be individuals, when really it's really very an empty pursuit if you just want to approach life as only an individual. We were designed to be in community. That's something that I fell into the trap of, understanding the American dream, if you will. We're all conditioned to be, very patriotic, which there's nothing wrong with, but there's a part of our culture that tells us that we should be individuals first, that all we need is ourselves. And there's so much now that technology has accelerated and has made it very challenging for our young men. And there's so many young men that aren't in the church, that have left the church and that haven't come back, that have careers and lives where, just like myself, at one time in my life, I didn't feel like I needed the church. I think a lot of men don't feel like they need the church, or don't feel like the church really is something that that should be a part of their lives. Or maybe they're doing so many things that they're so busy that they're just not making time for it. Again, I think that the men of today are just facing a very unique challenge. And I myself can say that with confidence because I was one of them. I went through that. I stayed away from the church for long periods of time. I wanted to only pursue my own happiness, which is not ideal. And it will only lead you deeper into that feeling of emptiness. And the only thing that can really fill it is joy that's given to you when you are a part of the church, a part of your community, and then in serving the church, which I'm very blessed to be able to do now. I always wanted to find a way that I could serve the church, but I never knew what that could be. And it wasn't until I really understood the importance of submitting to God's will and not forcing my own will when amazing things started happening in my life.
Yeah, I think that's really important. And a lot of people, I think, can learn from you, men and women. So what do you think this translates to in terms of the role that the DOMSE Antiochian Men's Board will have, and local parishes expecting to interact with the board members and yourself?
That's a great question. And I think it's very important that everyone understands the role of the board, the Antiochian Men's Board. The board, in my vision, is there to support the parishes, to support the men in each church. It's not going to be a top-down organization where we're forcing churches to do things in a certain way. Every church has different needs, as Bishop Nicholas has said many times, and it's the truth. There's no two churches exactly the same. Each community has its own challenges, its own struggles. There's churches that have different demographics. There's some that maybe have mostly converts, or there's some that may have mostly cradle Orthodox Christians that have been Orthodox their whole life, and some may have a good mix. Each community is going to have different opportunities, and I see the board's function as really just providing the resources necessary and to provide a way of connecting our churches together, because we're so much stronger together. We can accomplish a lot as a diocese, being in community together, all of the churches connected. I know that often the analogy is used that, the church is like a ship, and in a lot of cases is designed like a ship, and we're all in that ship together. And I think if I could extend that analogy a little bit, sometimes it can feel very lonely, where you feel isolated being the only Orthodox church for many miles.
Mm-hmm.
Your closest church may, be 8 hours, 10 hours away from where you are. That feeling of isolation it's really hard for a lot of Orthodox Christians that feel like they're completely adrift, if you will. And what I think is important for everyone to understand in our diocese is that there's a whole fleet of ships out there. There's so many churches. There's 40 some odd parishes that have men that are Orthodox Christians that are struggling with largely the same struggles in a lot of ways, different struggles, maybe from church to church, but we're all in the same culture and in even the same region of this country. And there's a lot of common threads. Feeling that you're a part of that bigger fleet, knowing that there's others out there, and then using technology in good ways to connect with each other, to have fellowship with each other, and to pray for each other. I think this is a great and exciting time where the Antiochian Men is truly going to be a different organization that we have not seen in the church before. And it's an exciting time. We have a lot of great plans and goals, but that feeling of isolation does not need to be there. And that's the great thing about using technology is we're going to be able to do things more together. And even if it's in a virtual space, trying to do in-person events as much as possible, but using the good parts of technology is something that I'm very passionate about.
It's very reassuring that you use that analogy of a ship. The church, it may seem like you're by yourself, but there's more people around, and that brings to light the PLC this summer as well, where you had shared a very moving, profound testimony to men who were present there. And we have that audio recording actually on this YouTube channel uploaded right now. And many of the men who weren't even in the room at the time have listened to it and commented on how much it spoke to them. Will the Antiochian Men be focused only on that, which was spoken about at the PLC, or are we going to be focusing on other things as well and expand?
The short answer is no. We won't be just focused on what was discussed in that meeting. I wish we had more time at the PLC. I wish that meeting could have lasted all day long. Unfortunately, we only had a couple of hours, and the first topics that were brought up just seemed to resonate with a lot of the men that were there, and even some that weren't there that have heard that recording. I've talked to many men from across the diocese since then, and I think it was a good starting point. And I know that those topics may not apply to everyone in such a personal way. There may be some watching this video where the things that we talked about, pornography addiction, video game addiction, overindulgence in entertainment, some of the things that the younger men are struggling with, that may not be something that applies to you if you're watching this video. But having said that, I think it's important for us all to realize that even if it may not be affecting you, it's very likely affecting somebody you know. It could be affecting your son, your grandson. It could be affecting a friend of yours, and it's very likely that they're not talking about it. These topics aren't something people are eager to admit or to want to talk about. There's sometimes a lot of shame that men feel, and they don't know how to get out of it. I myself know what that feels like. I was in a situation where I was doing things that I never thought I could change. I never thought I could get out of it. So I know what it feels like. And I think there's a lot of people that don't know how to relate to people that are going through that, because they themselves are maybe not facing those same challenges. But one of our important roles in the Antiochian Men is to be mentors. So the younger men really need our older men to come alongside them, to show them the way, to be there for them. And it's much harder to do that if you don't know where people are in their life, what they're going through. And you have to meet people where they are, and you have to understand not only the problems that exist, but what to do about it. So that's one of the things that I really hope to focus on. But again, it's not only going to be those topics. There's many, many other things that we plan to address as Antiochian Men. It'll be a much wider scope. And again, we didn't have as much time to get into all the things we'll be addressing, but we've been meeting as a board and making sure that the things that we do have planned are much broader and that it is inclusive of everyone, because different men are in different seasons of life. There's people that face different challenges depending on, what season of life they're in. So we understand that, and we are, as a board, very focused on making sure that the scope of the Antiochian Men's ministry is much wider than that, and there'll be much more to come.
Absolutely. That's a really good answer. And I do think with the events of the PLC, there's a lot of excitement that's been generated. Even though these things aren't comfortable to talk about a lot of the time, a lot of people really wanted to attack and hit it on the head. So with all of that being said, we've seen some early success, and one of these successes has been the GroupMe app, which you've gotten a lot of the men involved with from across the diocese. Would you mind sharing what your plans are for the GroupMe and what you envision it may look like in 1 or 2 years from now?
Yes, I'd be happy to. I really enjoy talking about GroupMe. You, Bryce, yourself know the success we had here locally at St. Nicholas in Springdale with GroupMe, and we were really pioneers using that for the first time to connect with each other. The men in our church, many of them are younger men. They have careers, they have different schedules, different work schedules, and it's very difficult for us to get together sometimes in person. While we still do that regularly, it's good to have that virtual space where we can stay connected with each other, and we can check in at a time that's convenient. You can even mute the app or turn off the notifications. And when you're in a busy work week and on just a break, you can just check in and see some of the things that are being posted. There's been prayer requests. There's been best practices shared between churches. It's such an amazing blessing now to be able to see the GroupMe app and the way we've been using it here at St. Nicholas scaled up to the diocese level. And my plans long term, I'll tell you that I think that the GroupMe app is great, and a lot of early feedback has been that really it's really too limiting, but I would also say that there's a benefit in its simplicity. And we want to encourage as many men as possible to join on GroupMe from the diocese. And especially the ones that have already joined, we've identified as that they're clearly leaders because they care enough to join and be early adopters to get connected. And I see GroupMe evolving to becoming much more of an administrative tool where we as a board can communicate with the Antiochian men leaders in each church, sending out materials, sending out resources, and making announcements just practically. There's a calendar feature that we've already started using for official diocese events. We've been sending out polls. There's a poll running right now where we can get information. It's a great tool. We've also been experimenting with another app recently that we think will be much better for hosting discussions. And that's something that's great, because if we do start talking about some topics, people can set up anonymous profiles and can join that app and have discussions with being completely anonymous, which I think is important to a lot of people. But it also has the function of doing discussion threads, very similar to what you see on Facebook. We didn't want to start using Facebook because of all the distractions that are in Facebook. There's ads and there's so many things where people fall into the trap of comparing themselves to others. We wanted something simplistic. So the simplicity was intended, but we're not going to stop with GroupMe. I think this other app that we're considering, we're going to down the road. Eventually, it seems like it might be a tool that we use to launch a lot of these discussions to create subgroups with different topics, whether it's parenting, or it could be pornography addiction. It could be, overindulgence in media and entertainment. It could be more practical discussions about just service ideas, fellowship ideas for your church. We don't want to stay isolated. We want to make sure we're having this discussion with other churches, to share best practices and ideas, to share successes. Success stories can become contagious, and we've already seen that in GroupMe. So if anyone's watching this video, any men in the diocese, please join on GroupMe if you haven't already. I know we've been sending that out in our newsletters, and I'm sure have had that posted here, and you can do that on the YouTube channel. But it's important that we do get as many men that are interested in being connected as possible, so that you can then carry a lot of what we're doing into your parish and become leaders with the men in your local church.
It's been a really good tool that we've used. We've been able to connect with guys all over the diocese already. I think we have close to 70 members now. I think we're doing pretty well.
I think it's over 70 now. It's grown quite a bit.
Yeah, every week at least a few jump in, and they're always welcomed with open arms. So it's been good to see that in real time. So, I'm in the GroupMe, you're in the GroupMe, and I'm sure there's some guys who are watching this right now who are inspired to get involved. How can they join up in the GroupMe with us?
Well, I think the most important thing is to reach out to us directly. We have an email address that's been set up for the Antiochian men at the diocese level for our board. And that email is just simply amen, AMEN, and then DOMSE, DOMSE, @gmail.com. And I don't know if there's a way you can add that to the description of this video so that people can see that more clearly. But if you can send an email to that email address, we can send you the link to the GroupMe, and there's even an instruction sheet that we've created that's a step-by-step on how to sign up. You don't have to have a smartphone to join on GroupMe. It can be done on a computer. So if you even have a library close to you that has a computer with internet access, you can just go there, sign up for it. There's a web-based version that works very well. Some of us use the app, which is the most convenient way, but the computer also allows other people that may not have a smartphone to connect. So it's a great tool, and I would encourage, first of all, to send us an email. Tell us what church you're from in the diocese, and we'll respond with that link so people can join.
That's right. Yeah, we'll throw the email in the description of this video, and you guys can just shoot us an email, and we'll get you involved as soon as we can. Now that you've been appointed as president of the Antiochian Men, what are some of your short-term goals and your long-term goals for the organization?
Well, we have a lot of exciting plans, and we've discussed that as a board already in our first meeting. We have another meeting already scheduled here coming up. Some of our longer-term goals, I'll start with those. We want to make sure that the Antiochian Men events at the next PLC, which will be in Memphis, Tennessee, we want to make sure that those events are meaningful and that they're created in such a way that they can be interactive, that we're involving the men, and that we're doing what the men really want us to do, that we're including spiritual elements to it, that it's not just business meetings. We want to be a dynamic ministry and to change according to the needs of our diocese and even individual parishes. So I think, first of all, we'll be working on a constitution. Bishop Nicholas has mentioned that he has a draft of one, and he's asked me to make some edits, to change it as needed, and I'll be working on that with the help of the board, and we want to make sure we're getting it right. We want to spend the time it takes to make sure that it will be a good constitution that will serve us for many years to come. And we don't want to rush. We want to make sure we're getting feedback to make sure that we have the right constitution assembled. But again, this is not going to be a top-down bureaucracy. We want this to be something that is the best structure to support the local churches. There's so many churches that have existing men groups that have had them for years, and we want to help to build upon what they've started, not to change what they've started. So that's a very important goal for us, is that by the next PLC we'll have the right constitution that we can hopefully put into place to vote on, and to have, again, a meaningful event or events, more than likely more than one event at that PLC. Also, in the more short term, maybe medium term goals, we have a couple of retreats planned, one in the fall, one in the spring. We want to, if we can, carve out something for the men, since we're a brand new organization, so that we can get the men together, since so many of us will be there for the fall retreat, the first full weekend of September in Franklin, Tennessee. And then I believe the winter retreat is at the end of January in Atlanta, which is a great central location in our diocese. We want to take advantage of those opportunities and try to plan something that can be specific to the men. And I'll be asking His Grace Bishop Nicholas for his guidance and support with that, and to make sure that we have something there. But also virtual retreats. One of the things we learned in one of our polls that we've done is that one of the top things that the men want to start is a virtual retreat with guest speakers. We have plans for that. And maybe a more short-term and immediate goal that will tie in with our first virtual retreat that we were already talking about. I guess I could use this opportunity to announce that we're all gonna have a book to read together, and we'll take it slowly and read it a chapter at a time and do virtual retreats to encourage discussion and to ask questions about the content of the book. It's a very simple book. It's a book that I read about a year ago. It's called Truly Human, and it's by Kevin Shear, who is actually a member of our church, as you know, Bryce, here in Springdale, Arkansas. And I believe you might have a copy of the book with you if you want to show it.
Yeah, I've got it sitting right over here. I actually just finished it the other day. It's a really good read.
That's great. There it is, Truly Human by Kevin Shear. There's actually an ebook available on many different platforms. If you have an iPhone or iPad, it's in iBooks. It's only $9.99. It's something I actually downloaded because I wanted to reread it myself. The physical book is also available on Amazon, but also it's through Ancient Faith Publishing. So if you go to the Ancient Faith store, and we'll put the links to that, I guess, in the description of this video as well. But this is a very simple, straightforward book. It's not extremely complicated, deep theology being explained from the point of view of, a monastic. And there's nothing wrong with that, but there's a place for it. But this is a really accessible book to anyone. It's written by, again, knowing the author, I'm a little biased, and I'm sure you are too, Bryce. He's done amazing things in our church, just with our local community groups and leading discussions. But this was a great starting point for me. Just speaking personally, when I read this book, I was very moved by the content in it, and it helped me to start, as I was saying, connecting those dots of things that I had experienced in the church but didn't really have a full understanding of. And so I wanted to start with this, and especially because we have access with the author, I'm hoping we can get an interview with him done and added. Maybe that can be the next interview that we post on our YouTube channel with Kevin Shear himself to talk a little bit about his book. But my plan is that our first virtual retreat will focus on chapter 1, and we'll announce when that is, I'm sure in the next few weeks. But I really would encourage everyone to get a copy of the book. If not the physical copy, it's very convenient to have the ebook because you can just download it to your phone or to a Kindle or a Nook or whatever device you might have. So we'll help everyone and make this announcement formally in a newsletter. But this is something that I wanted to get started right away. We want to have, maybe on a monthly basis, we'll take a chapter of each of the book and do it chapter after chapter, have Kevin maybe join in some of those discussions, and then perhaps even launch this new app that I was talking about with that first virtual retreat. So that's something that we're working towards as well. But then the most, I would say, imminent goal is by the end of the summer, I want to have a primary point of contact for the Antiochian men in each church in our diocese. We have churches that we haven't heard from yet. And it's very important, I think, for us to make sure that everyone's included. And I want to send something out to the churches from the board that we will hopefully do soon to maybe make an introduction, and eventually send a packet of resources and material that could be customized to the needs of the church in each community that we've been able to accumulate from talking with existing men's groups. So that's something that's more immediate, and I would ask just to make sure that everyone who is aware of the Antiochian men helps us and spreads the word. And I think that by the end of this summer, I think that's a good goal, that we can hopefully have at least one or two men that we know that we can go to as that point of contact.
Yeah, I do think that those are very good goals going forward. They're very realistic as well, especially if we can get at least one man or one or two men from every single parish within the diocese to get connected and start to bring us all that much closer together from all across this huge region from the Southeast. So thank you, Michael. What can men that are watching this video right now do to help the Antiochian Men's Organization in addition to what you had mentioned?
Well, I would again just stress that it's important that we all spread the word. There's a lot of men that, as I mentioned, have not been to church in a while. I know a lot of them personally, at least locally. And I think this could be a great chance for us to welcome those men back to the church, to have a way for the men that don't feel like they need the church or don't feel that they're even worthy to be in the church. I felt like that at one point, but the truth is none of us are worthy, and we're all in this together. And I would ask for everyone's help to just reach out to others, especially those that haven't been to church in a while. Tell them about the Antiochian men. Send them a link to our YouTube channel to start watching some of these interviews, to hear about the exciting things that we have planned that are coming, and also just to reach out to us. If you're not receiving our Antiochian Men newsletter that we send out, send an email to that email address that I gave, the amendomse@gmail.com. Reach out to us. Tell us what church you're from. Tell us what needs you have in your church. Maybe give us some feedback. Give us some ideas. We've already heard from men from across the diocese with great ideas, and we're even talking about those now and incorporating those into our plans. Again, we're stronger together, and I would just encourage everyone to make sure that you're helping us to spread out the word to other men and in neighboring churches. You may know men from a church the next town over that you can get a hold of. Tell them about GroupMe. Tell them about the YouTube channel. We're trying to build awareness, and that's what everyone can help us do.
That's really good. I think that a lot of people, that's so simple as well. I think that a lot of people can contribute in such a way. So thank you, Michael. That's all I have for you today as far as our questions go. Thank you very much for coming on.
It's my pleasure. It's been great, and I look forward to doing great things together with all the men in the diocese.
Absolutely. We're looking forward to working with you as well. So on behalf of all Antiochian men, I want to thank you again for speaking with us and allowing us to get to know you, Michael, a bit better. And we appreciate your time and explaining your vision. So thank you. Once again, this is Bryce Kirk, wishing all Antiochian men well, and I'm looking forward to speaking with you again soon. We'll be posting more interviews soon with the other Amen DOMSE officers, as well as a few other special guests. So stay tuned for those interviews right here on our YouTube channel. Also remember to click on subscribe down below so you can be notified when we have videos posted to our channel. This is Bryce Kirk signing off.